Hi everyone, this is Cheryl from the Sewing Basket again, and we are back with our 13th block for our 2020 quilt. So this block, we're moving on. The last 5 blocks that we've been doing, we were working with the angled rectangle and combining it with the flying goose block to create several different looks. So today we're moving on to this block right here, which is called the cat's cradle block. So you're dealing with half of your block is one color, and then the other half is going to be 2 small triangles and the square. So just a quick explanation. Typically, to make the half square triangles, which you guys have been used to making now, you're going to take 2 triangles, and a standard half square triangle is just going to be 2 solid colors, one on each side. For the cat's cradle block, instead of having this piece be solid, we're going to create the other half of the triangle by using 2 small ones and a square. So to do that, we need to start with our pieces for this block. We're going to be cutting 4 3-inch squares. Again, all of these squares need to be cut in half diagonally one time. So we'll end up with 8 of our small triangles. And then these are going to be our corner blocks. And so when we get to our sewing machine, we're going to need to add these triangles. So I'm going to be placing the tip of the triangle in this corner, sewing up. And then the second triangle is going to get placed in the opposite corner. So I end up with this straight line going across the top, creating my second triangle piece. So we're going to go over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So to make the pieced half of our cat's cradle block, again, we want to start, and I lay my square kind of on point. And I'm going to take one of my triangles and lay it down so that the point of my triangle is at the corner of my square. I'm going to put them together, and with this one I like to lead into my machine with the corner rather than the triangle side or the little tip side. So I'm going to put it in here. And I want to lead with that end and sewing off. So I'm just going to do this with all 4 of my triangles. I'm trying to keep my hand out of the way of the video here. It has been a bit of a struggle trying to get these videos done at home, seeing as we're not able to do so much at the shop with the safer at home going on right now with the coronavirus. So I hope you can all bear with me if things aren't as... I've tried several different places to set my camera at the machine here. Alright, so I got my the triangle sewn onto the first 4 of my squares. And when I iron it, the first time I'm going to iron it so that I push my square over to the side. That way it's going to keep my triangle, the little tip of my triangle, where I can still see it to place the second one. So you can see that I can still see the little corner of my triangle. So it makes it just a little easier to do the second part. Okay, so to add the second triangle, again, I'm going to place it. I always like to double check to make sure it's right. It's easier to check now than to rip them out and resew them. Then I'm going to put them right sides together, and again I want to lead with the corner that my square is on. Alright, so now I'm going to iron these open, and we'll go back to the cutting table and I'll show you how to trim these up so they're square. Alright, so we have the 1/2 of our cat's cradle block, and now I need to square these up. So what you want to do is find a ruler that has where you can easily see your 1/4 inch mark, and you have a 45-degree line on it, okay? And this one here is probably the one that I like to use the most. This little black dotted line, I don't know if you can see it, is my 1/4 inch mark. And then on this one, there's a white line that's my 45. And what I want to do is I want to place it so that my 1/4 inch mark is right at the tip of where my brown square ends. And then I'm going to push over my ruler and make sure that that 45-degree line is lined up with that 45 degree of my half square or my half triangle. So I'm going to have that line lined up, and then you got to kind of keep playing around until you get the 1/4 inch at the top of the square and the 45-degree line along the side of your triangle. And then I can trim this off. And again, I had you cut these squares at 3 inches instead of the 2 7/8, so it gives you a little bit more wiggle room to do the squaring up. So put my 45 line on the side of my triangle, scoot it down until my 1/4 inch is right at the top of my square, and trim off my excess. If I don't use that 45-degree line, I can just lay my ruler down, but I'm not quite sure, all I'm doing is looking at that tip. Well, it doesn't matter what angle I'm at, it still could be off. So I definitely need to double check that 45-degree to make sure that it's all staying straight. One more. Alright, so we got 1/2 of our square done. Now I need to take for the larger triangles to make this piece, I had you cut 5-inch squares, and again we're going to just cut them in half diagonally. Alright, and when I go to put them together, I want to match up the light colors, so my brown square will go with my brown triangles, and my red will go with my reds. And when I go to the sewing machine, do the red, okay, I'm going to place these two on top of each other, and I'm going to line up this corner just for centering, but then I'm going to pull it all the way up to the top edge. This square, that 5-inch square, was slightly bigger, so any extra I want to trim off of this side. So I'm just going to make sure that this edge is even when I sew across it. And you do have to remember that these are both bias edges, so as you're sewing it, you have to let the machine do the work and don't pull it or stretch it while it's sewing. So we're going to go back to the machine and we're going to sew these together. Alright, so when we sew these together, I like to lay down the large triangle first, and then I lay the piece triangle on top, because as I'm sewing, I want to remember to be able to watch for that intersection, so I want this one on top. I'm just going to press it just a little bit. It's flipping on me. Again, I'm going to lay it on there. So I start with my tips matching up, and then I just scoot it up until this top edge matches. And the bottom triangle is going to be bigger, and that's okay. We'll trim that off when we get this step done. So I'm going to put it in. Remember not to stretch it as you're sewing. And aim to hit that intersection where your first two triangles were sewn onto your square. So again, place my triangle down, make sure I'm working with the same two colors. These are both my browns. Don't you hate it when your little tails get sucked down in there? So now I can clip them apart. I am going to iron my large triangle in the direction of the large triangle, and then we'll go back to the cutting table and trim these up. Alright, so we have our squares, they're ironed, and now we're going to square them up. So this time, we know that we've just squared this side up in the previous step, and we also know that this one was cut a little big, so we want to make sure to trim everything off of that side. So I'm going to take my 4.5, and this time I'm going to place it in the corner of my brown square. Have my 4.5 going across the bottom and up the side, and trim off any extra that I have sticking out. Again, when you cut those triangles or cut those large squares in half, sometimes one side can be a little bigger than the other, so this again is a nice way to be able to trim off. And some will have more than others, so this one had a little bit more on it, but I still can square everything up nice and even. Blocks just go together so much better when they're square. I definitely feel it's worth the time to square things up. Alright, so there are our 4 blocks. Now, what we want to talk about now is we have 4 blocks that are all the same, but a cat's cradle block, it's going to give you design options similar to the half square triangles or a log cabin block. Anytime you have a block that has a diagonal and one side is a different shade than the other, or you have that contrast, you can start turning them and flipping them in different directions to get different looks. So on your pattern today, I give you the instructions. Here's the little instruction for squaring up that first piece with your 45°. But down here at the bottom, I'm also giving you the option of 4 different layouts. So I'm going to play with those a little bit and show you what I mean. So the first block that I had, right, I took and I put all of my big triangles to the center. So that would be, I put my 2 reds opposite each other, and then I stuck with this large triangle going to the middle. Okay, so that's going to give me this look. But I can also, if I turn them, I can have it that my 4 little squares are to the middle and my 4 big triangles. So I'm just going to give all of them a half turn. So if you like that look, you can sew them together that way. The third way is, actually that one I don't have sewn together yet, is you can have all of your triangles going, the large triangles going in the same direction. So they're all pointing kind of up in this direction. So that would be a 4th option, or a 3rd option, sorry. And then the 4th option is going to give you, let me center it here, it's going to give you rows of either squares or triangles. And this is kind of a fun setting because if you keep stacking them next to each other, you just get all these different, a whole variety of the squares going in a diamond shape and then your large triangles going in a diamond shape. And to do that one, I'm going to have this one with my large triangle up here, and this one's going to stay the same, but then these two I have to turn a half turn so that I keep my squares lined up and then I have my triangles lined up. So you can see if this one was sewn next to here, it would just continue, and now I'm going to continue my little squares here, so you can really make a fun quilt by making all your blocks this shape and just sewing them side by side. So you really have whatever option you want. You can play around with it. If you find something that you think looks good, go ahead and sew them together. And again, you're just going to sew your top two, sew your bottom two, and then connect them down the middle. So I hope you have fun with this block today. This is going to be another series. The next 3 blocks after this one, we're going to continue working with this style Cat's Cradle block. However, we're going to keep changing it each time to give you different options and different looks as you assemble it. But it's always going to be having one side with a large triangle and one side with the 2 small in your corner. All right, we will see you next time. Bye.